What's up, guys? Today I'm going back to my roots, and we're doing kind of a retro review of William Lustig's 1980 Maniac.
Maniac. It will tear the life out of you.
Now, yeah, this is like it's a classic, but I don't think enough people have seen it. Like, I know our co-host Brandon has not seen it. And speaking of Brandon, as you see, joining me, Mike Sears, Speak Loud Podcast, GCG Brethren, co-host of Five Piece on Fago Lovers. This review kind of came about because, well, one, Gutter Garbs put out like a new kind of like anniversary. They were showing all these new Maniac designs, and I was like, those are fresh as fuck. But also, we did our top 5 horror movies of all time, and Mike mentioned it as one of his top 5. So I figured, why the hell, bring him on.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for
You
having me.
remember like your first like discovering this movie?
2001. My boy had it on DVD. I think it was like I don't know if Anchor Bay pressed it or what.
I think it was probably Blue Underground.
Blue Underground. Then it was a regular
Anchor Bay-
DVD.
Back then, man, Anchor Bay was putting out bangers.
Everything.
Yeah, they were putting out
Yeah.
everything. So I don't remember if Anchor Bay had the rights first and then it went to Blue Underground, because I think Blue Underground still have it.
Yeah.
But Anchor Bay may have put out an edition first, because like I said, they were putting out like all these Dario Argento classics, George Romero films. Like Anchor Bay
Yep.
was on fire back then. Now it's more like Scream Factory, but like if you were following horror back in the early 2000s, Anchor Bay was putting out everything.
Shout out to my boy Adam. You know, he lives in Florida now, but he put me onto that. And I was like, oh my God, this shit instantly took an attraction to it. Because I'm all about that nasty, dirty, gritty, early, dangerous New York shit. 42nd Street and Frank Zito just terrorizing bitches. Fantastic movie.
Yeah.
man.
Personally, I can't remember. It was probably the same time, because like
Yeah.
there's no way that I saw it before that on VHS.
Yeah.
It had to have been in the early 2000s, when there was that resurgence of like movies that we didn't even know existed were coming out on like Blu-ray and DVD, stuff that like we didn't have access to before because it was only on VHS. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like, it was unlikely that your mom and pop video store was going to get it, or like Blockbuster was going to get it, or some shit like that.
Yep.
But yeah, let's get into the movie. Directed by William Lustig, who this is really his first, I guess you could say, real film. Before that, he had done a bunch of porno and like adult films, much like Sean Cunningham had done before he'd done Friday the 13th, which is kind of funny because like during this time, it was like the video nasty era, where people were calling horror films like basically new pornography. Was exactly what they were calling it. So like having these old porno directors start directing like these classic horror films didn't help. Probably didn't help at that time too much. But and it was also starring Joe Spinell as Frank Zito and Carolyn Munro, who played the female protagonist, however you want to look at it.
And
And it was also co-wrote by Joe Spinell, because I guess he was a big horror fan. He was in Godfather and Rocky, and he kind of played these kind of gangster mobster type characters. And then he wanted to write his own horror film, which I thought was really cool. And I mean, Mike pretty much said like what this movie is. It's basically like this character who had this kind of, I guess his mother was like a hooker. And so he
Yep.
had this really abusive relationship with his mother. And so like he has all this like inner dialogue with himself about like there's parts where it seems like he's like taking on the role of his mother, and then there's scenes where he is himself getting abused by his mother.
Yep.
And so he goes out and he takes all this anger out on women in New York City.
Yep. His mother burned cigarettes on him and all that. You can see the
Yeah,
scars.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess like his first victim is actually a hooker, and
Purple
he
dress.
takes her back to his room, back to a hotel room. Well, hotel room's like $35.
I think Lustig is at the desk too.
Is that him?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
not 100% sure, but I wouldn't doubt it.
It is him. Yeah.
And then he takes her up in the room, and then he's like telling her to pose and stuff like that. and then he just starts strangling the bitch. Like he
Yeah.
just starts going fucking crazy.
It shows the
And
mother's face.
yeah. There's like it like interspersed between her. At first, I thought it was like in movies sometimes they can't get a hold of the actor, so they
Yeah.
have somebody else come in. I thought, what the heck is this? Is so obvious. And then
Yeah.
it took me a second to realize, like, oh no, that's his mom. So he's
Yeah.
like seeing his mother in the woman, and he's like strangling her. And he's like, Joe Spinell makes this movie. Like,
Yeah.
if it was anybody else, this movie would not be a cult classic. Like, his performance as Frank Zito makes this movie what it is. You know, I mean, I'm sure there are some other actors, but he's so good in this role. Like, there are scenes where he's like sweating and like nasty, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like you're. This is a little bit different because you're following Frank Zito. The movie takes place through the eyes of Frank Zito, which at this time was kind of interesting because almost all horror movies, especially at this time, were told through the perspective of the final girl or you know whoever, you know, the protagonists. And this is the first time we see it through his eyes, which I always thought was pretty interesting. And they took that to the extreme in the remake where the entire movie is told through POV of, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but Elijah Wood as Frank Zito. I don't know if he plays the same character, but basically.
Yeah, man. Like, just, you know, even like when he's talking to himself, you know, what would people say?
Yeah.
There's classic lines like that, you know, and just gruesome way of scalping them, putting the hair on the mannequins and all that shit. Like, shit's crazy, man.
Yeah, that's his thing. And then at the end when he strangles that girl, he like scalps her.
Yo.
And he has like these like mannequins in his room and like dolls, and he's got like candles lit all throughout the room, and he like will take their scalp and put it on the mannequin and like nail it onto the head of the mannequin. And it's like his way of, when he eventually meets the Carolyn Munro character, he kind of like hints that it's his way of preserving them forever, preserving the beauty or something like that. It's kind of like how he tells it.
She's stunning, by the way.
Oh yeah, and this movie, she's beautiful.
Yeah,
Man.
hell yeah.
Crazy. He kills a woman that's on the beach with her husband, kills both of them.
Thanks for the sticks, babe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he like takes a garrote to the guy.
Yeah.
And the girl, he just like straight up slits her throat.
Straight up.
And then then there's the shotgun scene, and this is probably the most infamous scene in the whole film. With Tom Savini plays a character in the film, and he's driving this girl, and they pull up in this little car, and they pull up by the river or something like that, and they're like secluded, and they get in the back seat, you know, and then Frank Zito starts getting in creeper mode, and he like comes up and he's like peeking through the window and shit. Yeah. She's like, no, stop, get off. He's like, fuck, you know, Tom Savino just got blue balled. So he gets up in his front seat. He's like, I don't see anybody. What the fuck? And so he goes to start up the car, and he turns the lights on, and there's all this like exhaust that comes up, and you can see Frank Zito standing there, and the light hits him, and there's a sting of music. And the other good thing this movie really does is it's really good is it builds tension.
Yeah.
These moments where like Frank Zito's chasing a woman or something, and like you're waiting for it to happen. Like, you know it's gonna happen, but you don't know. You know, it's not like the cat jumps in the front of the camera and you get scared. There's none of that. It's the tension that builds. And that's what happens when he turns the lights on. And Frank Zito's standing there. You don't know what's gonna happen. And he's standing there, and then all of a sudden he jumps up on top of the hood of the car, and he pulls out his shotgun, brings it out like this, boom, and you see it all. It goes through his head just explodes. Tom Savini's head just fucking explodes. And it's, if you've ever seen Scanners and the head that explodes in Scanners, it's like that. It's insane. And it was Tom Savini actually set that all up. And what he said is, with that head, he just put in like everything that was at craft services. Like there was like shrimp cocktail juice in there, like all kinds of stuff in that head. And he kills Tom Savini's character, and then he comes around the door and opens the door on the chick, and he
Yeah.
just brings the shotgun around to where the chick is at, and it builds for a little while. Like there's probably 20, 30 seconds of him just pointing the shotgun at this chick, and then it kind of goes to him and he just pulls the trigger. You don't see this one.
No.
And then it like cuts basically to the next day or whatever the fuck. But what's funny about that scene is Tom Savini's the one who took the shot with a shotgun. And what Mike was saying about like the New York style back then, it was like they didn't have the money to afford to get like shooting licenses, to like get the license to shoot things. So a lot of times when they're shooting these movies in New York back then, it was like guerrilla style filmmaking.
Yep.
Like pull up in a car, jump out with the camera, shoot their scene, and get the fuck out before the cops found out they were filming something. So when they shot this scene, they shot a real shotgun, and you're not allowed to. Obviously, you're not allowed to shoot a gun in New York City. So what happened is Tom Savini jumped up, shot, and then they got him the fuck out of there. They like booked the fuck out of there after they shot that scene. And that car, what's funny about this car, Savini, I watched a Savini interview.
Yeah.
They pushed that car in the river. Like they took that
shit.
What happened is they shot that scene. They put that car in a garage for like 2 weeks, and then they brought it out because they were gonna shoot some of the other stuff they needed to get done with the car. And it smelled terrible because that head was in there with all that food and everything.
Yeah.
Fuck it. So they took that car and they pushed it in the river. So in the river in New York City, there's the car from Maniac with the old Tom Savini body still in it.
That's crazy, bro. 1980,
Yeah.
79 was probably filmed it. Who knows, you know?
It probably got pulled up a long time ago and nobody knew what the fuck it was. But yeah, I thought that story was fucking hilarious.
It is dope. In the scene before that, like when he's loading up the shotgun and he's eating the Cracker Jacks, he's like probably want a cracker. This just, you know, this nigga's warped.
Yeah, he has like his own like get up too. He wears like a bomber jacket. That's got like a little like collar on it.
Yep.
Real short, and then he puts on his knit cap and he's fucking ready to go. And that's like his stalker material, I guess. But then there's like a switch up, like about an hour into the movie. You see like Frank Zito, he puts on his mask and he becomes like this like charismatic character that like manages to woo Carolyn Monroe, which is like, it's really crazy because like you know, this movie, it's actually scary because like this guy is real. This guy exists. You know what I mean? Not like this exact character, but like serial killers exist. And like
absolutely.
You really get to see that because like I said, like 90% of the movie is him being crazy, like bananas, batshit insane, talking to himself, killing chicks. And then you get to see that 10% where he interacts like with people, and he's a normal guy, completely normal. There's really no kinks in the armor when he's interacting with Carolyn Monroe's character. It's really crazy.
Takes her to dinner, brings her a bear.
Yeah, brings her a little bear and stuff. But even then, like you see the little cracks where he steals when he visits her when she's doing her photography stuff.
Yeah.
One of the models there, he takes this necklace that her mother had given her, and then that's the way that he like sneaks his way into getting in with that girl. And murders her as well. But then I guess there's really no spoilers with this kind of movie because like it's just a crazy dirty fucking movie. And I mean, you hear basically what you're hearing. It's like this is a movie that like you experience. You know what I'm saying? It's not like like a spoiler is gonna ruin the movie for you.
No,
because it's all in the emotion, it's all in the tension, it's all in the build up to these different moments that happen. But eventually he breaks when he tells Carolyn Monroe's character, like, hey, I want to take you out for dinner or whatever. And he's like, hey, you mind if we stop by my mother's grave?
Yeah.
Because she passed away on Christmas. And like, I almost feel, they don't say this in the movie, but there's almost like a hint that he murdered his mother. I don't know if you got that as well.
I got that too.
But there is kind of like this underlying feeling that he murdered his mother. He tells everybody that she passed away in a car accident.
Yeah,
but it kind of feels like he murdered her. I don't know if that's like common knowledge to like something, but it feels that way anyway.
Because you can see the guilt there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though she was an abusive bitch, she got some
guilt. And I think he says some things too that kind of make you feel that way.
Yeah.
But he's at her grave with Carolyn Monroe, and he snaps basically, and she
Peter
starts.
knew.
Yeah,
She knew.
yeah. He starts fucking chasing her. She hits him with a fucking pickaxe, I think, right in the
Yeah.
fucking arm, and then he goes home. And then I think probably the second greatest scene in the movie.
Oh God.
He's laying on the bed, and he's like delirious because he's losing blood. He just got hit by a pickaxe and shit.
Yeah.
And he looks over at where he has all his mannequins, and all these mannequins have like the scalps of the women that he's killed, right? And so they start turning into the women that he had murdered, and like they get up and they start grabbing weapons and shit, and they come up over to his bed, stab him in the chest, and then there's this. I can't even imagine seeing this movie in the theaters back in the 80s,
Oh my
but
God.
like they decapitate him with their hands, and you
Yep.
see it all. Like
His
there's
fucking head
no
off.
cuts, there's no like off screen. Then his head is like they pull his head fucking off of his body. It's it's crazy. Tom Savini at his best, and it's brutal. Like I said, it's probably the shotgun scene is obviously the most famous scene, but
Yep.
this scene is bananas as well.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I said, Tom Savini at his best, special effects going crazy. But it's kind of like a fever dream because at the end, the cops come in and they find his body, and I'm assuming he bled out, which is like really ironic because that's how Joe Spinell passed away in real
That's
life.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he slipped in his shower and got a cut, I think, on his foot, and he was bleeding really bad. And he went and he slept, and I guess he didn't know he was a hemophiliac, and he just bled out in his sleep. And like at the end of this movie, well, they think he's dead. They leave. He's laying on his side. The camera kind of comes around, and then
Fucking
he's just
eyes.
like, boom.
Yeah.
Music stings, and the title screen comes on. And it's the end of the fucking movie. Classic.
I love
Classic.
his subway scene too. He's chasing the bitch
Oh yeah,
in
that's
the
like
bathroom. The fucking sticks her.
yeah, that's part of the like the tension that I was talking. Yeah, he takes like
Yeah.
it's like a Civil War like bayonet or some shit like
Yeah.
that.
Some crazy
Fucking
shit.
impales her with it.
Ew.
Yeah,
Good,
when
bro.
this movie came out, the controversy surrounding it was
Oh
crazy.
God, I'm about to mention that.
Yeah, the controversy surrounding it was crazy. The Los Angeles Times would not run advertisements for the film. There were all these feminist groups that were coming out saying, violence against women. This is gonna cause men to go out there and kill women. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing we hear today about video games and violent
Yeah.
media and things like that. But back then it was crazy. There's actually I'm gonna put a clip in here because it's fucking hilarious. There's this woman who works at I don't know, she works at a factory, or not a factory, but like a office building somewhere. And right outside her window is the Maniac advertisement, which in itself is crazy. Hold up the DVD real quick.
He's got a
That poster
fucking
right there
boner.
is what's there. Yeah, and he's got like a bulge in his pants, and he's holding a scalp in his hand. That was the advertisement they put everywhere. They put that up on billboards, man. Like that's how crazy it was. So this is right outside this woman's window. So she gets pissed off. She goes out there with paint and she paints over it with
Over in white paint.
It's so crazy. And I just thought that clip was fucking hilarious. And then there's all these like all over the place. There were news reports about it. They would go and talk to like film goers, and there's a guy like, "Oh, I didn't really like it. It wasn't as good as Texas Chainsaw
Chainsaw
Massacre."
Massacre,
And there's all these news reports and stuff. I mean, it's funny because back then it was like this was like news. Like when I'm sure you guys have seen The Exorcist when they were
Oh
interviewing
God.
people come out of seeing The Exorcist and stuff. It was like back then movies were a fucking event.
Some dude got so scared he ran out the theater of the Exorcist and broke his jaw. Jesus
It was
Christ.
crazy back then. I don't movies I guess were like just kind of like movies were the one way to see that kind of stuff though, because like if you didn't catch it at the theater, when the hell were you going to see that movie? Because there wasn't even
Yeah.
VHS at that point. So if you didn't see it in the theater, you sure as hell weren't going to see a movie like that on TV. You know,
Yep.
there was
That's
some other
bullshit.
funny stuff like that I found out about this movie before it came out. Is that originally Dario Argento was going to help fund the movie, and
Oh
his
shit.
wife or his girlfriend, I think at the time, Daria Nicolodi, was supposed to play the role that Carolyn Monroe played. And they were supposed to have Goblin do the score, which would have been absolutely insane. Because if I have any criticism of this movie, it might be the score. Because the
Oh, really?
score is, I think the score is a little weak. There's some
I love it.
cool cues in there. But like, can you imagine if they had Goblin do the score for this movie? It would have been insane. Yeah, I think my only criticism would be the score a little bit. And it's not saying that it's bad. It's just saying that like it's the only weak part of the film, in my opinion.
I respectfully disagree. I love it. It's creepy. It's fucking. I just love it.
Yeah. It does have a. It does. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just
Yeah.
the weakest part of the film, in my opinion.
Word.
And they were going to do a sequel to the film called Maniac 2, Mr. Robbie, because Joe Spinell was actually a huge, like, he was kind of like a feminist. Like, he was very protective of women on set. And so when he found out that women didn't like the movie, he was really upset about that. So he wrote the screenplay for the next film, Maniac 2, Mr. Robbie. And in that little short that they ended up doing, because he passed away before they could actually make the film, he played like a children's host of like a show, like a daytime children's host. And he was kind of like a clown. And what the idea was that kids were writing him letters saying like, hey, my daddy's poured hot water on me, he's beating me. So Mr. Robbie would go out and kill whoever the parent was. And there's a little short, about 7 minutes, you can see it on YouTube, where he does that. He goes to this restaurant where the cook is apparently abusing his son, and he like dunks the guy's head in boiling hot water and then stabs him in the face. It's really good. Because Joe Spinell, like we said, really kills it. And then William Lustig went on to do Maniac Cop, all three Maniac Cop films.
Crazy shit.
He also did Uncle Sam. If you've ever seen Uncle Sam, straight to VHS, cheesy as fuck slasher type film. I don't think anything. Maniac Cop is another cult classic, but I don't think anything surpassed Maniac at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved to have continue to do stuff with Joe Spinell, obviously, but yeah.
Absolute classic, top 3 movie of all time, horror wise for me. Goes 1974 TCM, Exorcist, and then Maniac, bro. Like, iconic.
Yeah.
And I would love to. Go ahead, brother. My bad.
No, go ahead.
I said I would love to like expand my Maniac collection. Like, there's this European version. You get a fucking like statue of this and shit.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, but the price is outrageous,
Yeah. They do a bunch of crazy. I know what company you're talking about, and they do a whole bunch of Blu-rays like that, where they do like crazy. I think they have like a Dawn of the Dead one. They got a bunch of Evil Dead. I think there's an Evil Dead one too. They do some crazy stuff. Yeah, this is a classic. Like me and Mike were saying, it's that old New York style of film. And the other movie that reminds me a lot of this one is, if you've ever seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
God,
it's very
TV scene, bro.
Yeah. It's very similar to this movie in a lot of ways. It's not quite as intense, because Joe Spinell just kills it. But if you've seen Henry, I mean, if you haven't seen Maniac, I doubt you've seen Henry. But if you're a horror fan and you've seen Henry and haven't seen Maniac, highly suggest. It's in the same vein. I mean, for me, this is like a 5 out of 5. Like, it's really hard to like say anything otherwise. I mean, it's a classic for a reason.
Absolutely.
I mean, Tom Savini doing the special effects, Joe Spinell playing the main killer, Carolyn Monroe, who's kind of like a scream queen in her own right at this point.
It was a long time ago, Frank. Classic, bro.
Yeah, his inner monologue. There's a lot of interesting things they do with the camera too. There's a scene where like he's looking directly into the camera, which they always tell you never to do.
Yeah.
But what you realize is like he's not like looking into the camera, because the camera pans and he stays looking at the same spot, which was really interesting, because I never seen anybody do anything like that before. Because they always tell you don't look in the camera, but when he turns the camera, you realize he's not actually looking into the camera, or he's not supposed to be looking into the camera. He's just looking in that direction when the camera moves. Yeah, classic. 5 out of 5 for me, Mike.
Yep. Likewise, 5 out of 5, bro. Like, I worship this film. I put it up there with like Dawn of the Dead, not a horror movie, but Scarface. Like, these are movies that I can watch over and over again, never get sick of it. Yeah, Maniac, 1980, masterpiece.
Yeah, it's classic. And if you want to watch it, it's actually free right now on Tubi, so you can watch it for free, no risks involved. There should be some clips throughout the movie, so you'll get a little bit, or throughout this review, so you'll get a little bit of a taste of
Yeah.
what it's like. But it's a movie you have to experience. Like I said, we didn't spoil a single goddamn thing for you.
No.
It's a movie that's you'll take a shower after you see it. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Oh God. Yes.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
man. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Classic movie. Mike, you want to plug anything before we head out?
Yeah, man. Speaking Club Podcast, Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday, man. Also, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Fago Lovers, 5-piece, with the good brother Luke the Goon, Joker's Gallery,
So good. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go check out Maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Don't regret it.
Thanks for having me, brother.